On this episode of Locked On Angels, the draft lottery happened yesterday at the winter meetings, and the Angels found out where they're going to be selecting in the 2025 first-time player draft, and we're going to tell you where and possibly who. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to John and I, the Super Halo Bros, for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please help us get to 10K by opening day and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our third off season, and we're heading into our fourth season here at Locked On Angels as your hosts, lifelong fans of the team, and we're happy to be talking Angels baseball with you Monday through Friday, every single weekday, and then December 15th, we'll drop down to 3 full episodes a week with some in-between, quick hits kind of stuff in between those episodes as well. But we are looking forward to talking Angels baseball with you all off season long. On today's show, Michael, the draft lottery happened yesterday. The Angels found out where they will be drafting in 2025. And that is spot number 2, the second overall pick of the 2025 player draft, amateur player draft, moving up from number 3 because they had according to the rankings, and then the A's and the White Sox were out of it. The Angels, if this were the old system, would have had the 3rd pick.
Yep.
But because of the lottery, they had pretty good odds to get that first pick, and they ended at number 2. And I am just so grateful that they didn't have their typical bozo Angels luck and fall to like 9, which was like the furthest they could fall. The only thing I'm mad about is that the Mariners jumped from like 17 to 3 or something.
Oh my gosh. Like that. Ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. They had some good luck. Usually it's bad luck for the Angels. Good luck for the Mariners, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So let's get into the details for the Angels earning that second spot. Let's go.
Yeah. So this is the first time that the Angels will be drafting this high since 1997. They drafted Troy Gloss. He was the number 3 pick out of UCLA. And then they drafted a bit higher than that 2 seasons before, 1995. They drafted Darren Erstad, number 1. Ersty got drafted in 92 and then went to college and then stayed in college for 3 years and then got drafted in 95 by the Halos. Here's the top 10, Johnny. Number 1 is the Nationals. Number 2, of course, the Angels. Number 3, some team in Seattle. Number 4, the Colorado Rockies. Number 5, the St. Louis Cardinals. Number 6, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who actually made a trade yesterday. Number 7, the Miami Marlins. Number 8, Toronto. They made a trade yesterday. Cincinnati's number 9, and the White Sox are number 10. Now, this is, for now, the top 10 prospects that are potentially available for each of those teams. John, why don't you read off that list to us?
Yeah, so everybody knows that Ethan Holiday, son of Matt Holiday and younger brother of Jackson Holiday, is the number 1 prospect in baseball. He, of course, is a high schooler and will be eligible to be in the draft. And so everybody's looking at Ethan Holiday for the number 1 pick. Jace LaViolette, who is out of Texas A&M, is the name that is currently tied to the Angels. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a second. Jamie Arnold from Florida State is number 3. He's the left-handed pitcher. Tyler Bremner from UC Santa Barbara. Seth Hernandez from Corona High, Mike, so nearby in Southern California. That's cool. Kaysen Cunningham, number 6. Another high schooler, a shortstop. Ava Arquette from Oregon State. Xavier Nance, Mount Vernon High School. Cruz Schoolcraft. What a baseball name right there.
I love it.
And Brendan Summerhill, Still a good baseball name.
That's a great,
there
yeah,
as well.
right
So
there.
again, considering the Angels have the second overall pick, you kind of want to spend some time looking at who's in that top 5, but also you got to make a consideration of who's in high school and also who's in college. And Mike, I think that's why Jace LaViolette is interesting. And considering he is the number 2 prospect, kind of fits the bill
Yeah.
for what the Angels have done and what will probably continue to do in this upcoming draft, right?
Yeah, did some research. Apparently he goes by Lavi, like a lot of people call him Lavi. So can we call him Lavi? I mean, since he might already be an angel.
Not until he becomes an Angel. That's it.
All right. Mr. LaViolette is the top collegiate prospect. He had 50 home runs in 2 combined seasons at Texas A&M. The last 2 seasons had a significant improvement in his walk and strikeout rates as a sophomore. Here's his slash line in college, John. 297, 433 on base, and a 726 slugging percentage. Now, those numbers are awesome. Obviously, they use metal bats, but he actually really grades pretty high. So here's his scouting grades according to MLB.com. Now, just for reference, a good scouting number for a baseball player is generally in the 60 to 80 range on a 20 to 80 scale. So 20 to 30 is well below average, 40 is below average, 50 is average, and 55 is above average. So keep that in mind. And these are the grades for Jace LaViolette. His hit tool is 45. His power is 65. His run tool is 55. Arm, 55. Fielding, 50. Has an overall 60 grade. So they see him as a above average hitter and an above average, way above average power hitter and an above average player. So somebody that I think teams will really enjoy, especially the Angels, if they do pick him at number 2.
Yeah, there were some great details from MLB.com, of course. The one thing that really stood out to me is the fact that he's a candidate to become the first 4-year college outfielder to go number 1 overall since Darren Erstad in 1995, which the Halos obviously made that selection.
Yep.
Now, look, Ethan Holiday, probably the consensus number 1 pick in this draft, but things change between now and when the draft actually gets here. I remember us talking a lot about, I think it was Chase Burns around this time last year, thinking, hey, if he falls to 8 for the Halos, that would be really great. And then he didn't go in the top 10, I don't think. And so things do change a lot when it comes to these prospect numbers and the projections here. Mike, the swing and miss is a concern for him. Even on the fastball, he has some swing and miss. And so it makes sense that his hit tool is a 45. The power is a 65. And as Lindsey Crosby, our good buddy, always says, your power tool is only as good as your hit tool. And so it will be interesting to see how that develops. I'm kind of feeling like I'm talking like he's already on the Angels. Right. And so, but I think it's important to keep that in mind. But he's a lefty. Remember, we all talked about Perry Minasian's looking for that left-handed power bat. Well, here you go. And if you want to bring him up, in September, like you did with Nolan Shawnoel, that's probably not off the table as well. But they do say that he makes quality swing decisions, 64 walks in 68 games last spring. Again, the swing and miss within the strike zone, especially on fastballs, he's huge. He's like 6'6".
Yeah.
So I was going to do a little deep dive before we got on here, but maybe while you're finishing out the conversation, I wanted to just see what his numbers look like compared to somebody like Aaron Judge, who, is also a very tall, athletic outfielder. So maybe I'll do that while you're taking it from here. Let's do that.
Yeah. So MLB.com says he's remarkably athletic for his size and posts solid run times out of the batter's box, even quicker once he gets going. So think like Mike Trout down the first base line, but this guy builds up and then gets faster as he runs. He played the corner outfielder spots as a freshman before moving to center field last spring. Most evaluators project him as a right fielder. They think he'll be in right field, probably his best spot. His power and his arm strength fit that right fielder profile. John, he's somebody that, at least right now, I think fits the Halos makeup. Even though they have a full outfield, he fits their makeup because they are looking for a left-handed bat. I know, obviously, they want that now rather than later, but he will be somebody that could move up in the next maybe year or two, because the Angels do move them pretty quickly through the minor leagues. He also is a college guy, 4-year college guy. And that's the thing that I've seen Perry Minasian pick over the last couple of years. I know that there's conversations about like what might happen with the draft. Two conversations that need to happen is that Ethan Holiday is going to be called Jackson Holiday, probably more than people want to know and people want to admit, right? But also, he might not go number 1, depending on how things work out. If Ethan does fall to number 2, there's still a question, though, on if the Angels actually would select him, because they do lean more collegiate than they do a prep player from high school. Now, if Ethan is there, I think Perry's got to get him, right? Because he's got that high potential. But with somebody like LaViolette, I think he profiles really well for the Halos. And even if they want to move him through the minor leagues because he's proven himself, I think he fits on this team within the next year or two. Obviously, it'd be great to see him marinate, develop, do those things. But that's one of the reasons why Perry does select college players, simply because it's like they've been in the minor leagues for the last 3 or 4 seasons, depending on how long they've been in college.
Yeah, to me, I said this on Super Halo Bros on Twitter. I said, am I the only one who is okay with the fact that the Angels got the number 2 overall pick instead of number 1, so that they don't fumble the number 1 pick and get laughed at and mocked for eternity? And so everyone was like, well, yeah, but they could fumble number 2, and that's very true.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I almost kind of like the fact that the decision in some sense will be made for the Angels based on who goes number 1. And if the Nationals were to say, take LaViolette, feel like he's a great fit for them, then yeah, you got to go Ethan Holiday if things still stand where they stand.
Sure.
Obviously. And yeah, Holiday's not going to be somebody you charge through the major or the minors like they've done over the past couple of years. But I don't think you need to do that anymore. I think they have it
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there was a desperation there for a while, but at the same time, Ethan Holiday, I mean, you've got to go for it if it falls to you. Okay. You ready for Judge's college stats?
Yes.
Over 3 seasons, like just 18 home runs. Can you believe it? Only 18 home runs over 3 seasons, but he did slash a 345 average, 451 on base, 529 slugging, and a 980 OPS.
Wow.
Now,
wait. So LaViolette has a over 700 slugging percentage in his time. So he's smashing the ball much more than Aaron Judge did. That's interesting.
Yeah. And he was in the, obviously Fresno State. So he's in the Western Conference there. But Judge is 6'7" and LaViollette's 6'6".
Yeah.
I don't know. That'd be a lot of fun to watch, Mike. I wouldn't complain about that.
Right. I 100% agree with you. And again, I think that left-handed bat plays in Anaheim now that lower wall is there. You can hit a lot of home runs there. Again, Garrett Anderson pissed off, right? Because they've lowered it. But I think LaViolette, man, if he ends up being an Angel and they end up keeping him and not trading him away or whatever might be the case, I think he could really, really play well in right field in Anaheim and could really play well with that right field wall and his left-handed bat.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on the show, Baseball America shared 2 other names that the Halos could take. At number 2, we'll share who they are coming right up.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place bets on all sports, including the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, FanDuel.com is where it's at. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. All right, we talked about, kind of the consensus number 2 overall draft pick would be Jace LaViolette. But Mike, there's some other names that the Halos might get to consider at number 2. But before we get to that, let's talk about what Baseball America said about the Halos. They said they were one of the winners in the draft because in a vacuum, they didn't move up too much. They only moved up from 3 to 2. But the fact is, they were not one of the teams that fell like the Rockies and Marlins did because they had the best odds to get the number 1 pick. Colorado fell to 4 and the Marlins fell to 7. That's absolutely brutal. And so now the Angels are in a position, according to Baseball Reference, to use an infusion of talent as the 30th ranked farm system per their mid-season organizational rankings. The Angels have pursued an aggressive draft strategy in recent years involving signing fast-moving collegians. Whether or not they continue that path is an open question, but picking second in most classes will give them access to that sort of player profile if they want to, who also gives them more upside potential. Again, Jace LaViolette, and then the college starters, Tyler Bremner and Jamie Arnold, are 2 of the names that Baseball America says that the Angels could be taking a look at.
I think the Angels are probably going to lean more towards a position player, and here's why. Remember, mid to end of the season, there were rankings about the Angels pitching in the minor leagues, and they were 4th amongst all of Major League Baseball in the minor leagues with their prospects. And so I could see them going more for a position player because, as you've talked about, there isn't really somebody that stands out outside of Christian Moore in the minor leagues right now. There isn't somebody that really grabs our attention and we say, man, I can't wait to see that guy. Can't wait to see him play. There's names. I mean, Kyron Paris is down there, right? There's names of people, but nobody that's really, nobody that's exciting and heart stirring, right? Christian Moore is exciting. Like, we want to see him. We can't wait till he comes up. And so I can see the Angels maybe move in the direction of selecting a big bat, an outfielder, a position player. That's one of the reasons why the ranking is so low. I do think that the rankings sometimes can be, in my opinion, I'm biased, but I think the rankings could be a bit biased as well because this team is really infused with a lot of talent just in the last year and the developing talent. And a lot of the good talent is on the major league roster as well. And so I think that this team is primed for some good players in the minor leagues, and I can see them leaning more in the direction of a Jace LaViolette or somebody in that makeup rather than a pitcher, because that seems to be the direction that they're going. Because with trades like the Carlos Estevez trade, it netted them 2 really great pitchers with Caden Dana down in the minor leagues right now. I think the Angels might look more for a position player than a pitcher. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. And then, it's all going to not really matter to their farm rankings anyway, because LaViolette will be in the majors before you know it, and so will Christian Moore. So the ranking system, I get it. It's fun. It's exciting to know that you've got a great system, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't mean anything if Zach Neto and Logan O'Hoppe and Sean O'Ell and those guys aren't in the system.
However, I would say that if those guys start really like performing and getting better, I do think that young players who come out of your system that perform at the major league level, I do think that influences the rankings that happen, even if those players aren't there. I think people see that and go, well, Anthony Volpe, really great. So maybe the Yankee system is actually better than we think. So let's give them a couple of ticks better. That's my opinion. I'm not a baseball guy, right? But I think that happens.
Yeah, I could easily see that happening. Now, there's also some really good news that comes along with the fact that the Angels got the number 2 overall pick. Last year, the second overall pick draft slot bonus was $9,785,000. And for reference, the Halos just had under $13 million to spend across the entirety of the draft. And usually, you got to give your number 1 pick a pretty significant bonus to make sure they pick with you. But also, there's an advantage to picking a college player so that, I mean, they what else are they going to do? They're in college and they're graduating and whatever. Maybe they're a junior. They want to play professional baseball. They're going to take your offer, right? But when it comes to high schoolers, it's a little more tricky because they can turn down your offer, go to college, and then you kind of wasted a pick that actually did happen to the Angels last draft. They will get a compensatory pick after the 3rd round because that happened. But here's an example. They gave Christian Moore $4.9 million last year, and his slot at number 8 was estimated at $6.5 million. He was ranked as the 13th best prospect coming into the draft. The Angels took him at 8, saved some money for the rest of the draft. Mike, it's interesting to me. Perry Minasian was asked at the winter meetings yesterday, and Rhett Bollinger reported this. He said, Minasian said that it's not necessarily a goal of the organization to select another fast mover through the system next year. He said, there's no specific blueprint. I don't look at it that way. But if you end up saving money early, you know you're going to get a high school player later on, but it's not necessarily a blueprint. We're going to look for the best talent, the best fit. There's some really good players in this draft. We're excited to at least talk about them. And so from that standpoint, I was a little bit hung up on the words, if you end up saving money early, you know you're going to get a high school player later on. And he's not saying anything wrong there because, like I said, that's a really good example of, you picked a 13th best prospect at number 8. He took the slot, that under slot, and then they were able to spend that money later. Kind of something they did with Caden Dana a couple years ago. I'm just really nervous that I'm like, can you guys just do the right thing here? Are you gonna take the number 8 best prospect at number 2 so that you can spread that money? Because that's what I think is different here, Mike. I think at number 8, which was the highest they had drafted in a pretty long time, I think you can do that. I think that you can go, you know what? Let's get Christian Moore. We'll save some money. We'll get some good high school guys later on and spread out that bonus pool money or the draft slot money. I'm very nervous that when it comes to having the second pick, you got to take who's there.
Yeah.
Right? You have to take who's there. And in our next segment, we'll talk about who's been at the number 2 pick
right.
in a little bit, but you can't mess around with this kind of stuff. Again, if it's pick 8, if it's 13, right? All that kind of stuff's up in the air. But when 1 and 2 are cemented as much as they are, and again, they'll probably change by spring and summer and by the time we get to the draft, I just think whoever is number 2 at the top 10 prospects when the draft comes, that's who they got to take, right?
Yeah. Often the right thing to do is the obvious thing to do.
Yes.
And I think often what happens in baseball is they try to get cute. Here's where you get cute. You take somebody like Ronaldo Lopez and you say, let's make him a starter.
Right.
Let's figure that out, right? And you do it and you're successful. Let's give the Angels some props. Let's sign Hunter Strickland. I think we can figure him out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do. You have to be creative or cute when it comes to those things as a general manager of a team. But sometimes, especially when you're picking at the very top of the draft, you don't have to overthink it.
Nope.
You don't have to overprocess it. You don't have to overanalyze it. You go with who is right there. Go with the best player, even if it's a high school player. Go with them right there, simply because you're not going to have that opportunity in the future. It's not guaranteed, right? You don't really want that opportunity because that means your team wasn't great. And so you got to go with that guy, and you're going to probably get 9 times out of 10 a really great player. And so don't blow this up. Don't blow this for us, Gene. This is an opportunity, right?
More cowbell.
This is an opportunity. And so I'm with you. Don't get cute. Don't overthink it. Make the decision. Make the clear, obvious decision, because I think that will help this Angel team in the best possible way.
And again, I think it's very helpful that part of the decision gets made for them based on what the Nationals do ahead of them. Freaking Nationals. They draft Bryce Harper number 1, Steven Strasburg number 1. I know it's been a long time, but good grief, man. Why do they always get these top picks?
The obvious thing though is that they went for the obvious pick. That's the thing. So learn from the Nationals because they're always Bryce Harper. Of course you're going to take it. Strasburg. Of course you're going to take him, right?
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully that decision will be an easy one for the Halos come the draft in 2025.
Johnny, let's talk about the history of the number 2 pick. I love this because it kind of gets us excited about who could this player potentially be for the Halos, right?
And again, it's like number 2 is just as obvious as number 1, so don't screw it up.
Yeah. So last year, a name that we already talked about on this show, the Reds selected Chase Burns. And he's somebody who's developing right now. Not too much like news about him.
I didn't mean Chase Burns then. I meant a different pitcher, and I wish I could remember his name because, yes, if Chase Burns went at 2, you know what? I think I was looking at the list of prospects from last year, and the name got stuck in my head.
In your head.
There was a pitcher that you and I were excited about this time last year, and he fell, and I wish I could remember who it was. But anyway, continue. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, so he was selected number 2. In 2023, the Nats selected Dylan Cruz. He was a great pick. Now, number 1 that year was Paul Skeens, which was an obvious pick for the Pirates. 2022, the Diamondbacks selected Drew Jones. And before we went on the air, I was like, I got to find out if that's Andrew Jones's son. Oh, it is. It's Andrew Jones's son.
And now you feel 1,000 years old.
I'm 90. And then, of course, that number 1 that year was Jackson Holliday. He's with the Orioles right now. 2021, the Rangers selected Jack Leiter. And so that's a big name for them. 2020, Heston Kierstead is the Orioles player. He was drafted number 2. Number 1 was Spencer Torkelson that year. So there are some big names. John, 2019, a guy named Bobby Witt Jr. was drafted by the Kansas City Royals at number 2. So, I mean,
like that.
That's a list of really good players, ones that we have seen start to turn out or are really turning out, and ones that potentially could really turn out. So a lot of exciting names can come at number 2 for the Halos.
Man, I'm looking up this name and I can't find it. And I'm really getting angry here, Mike, because I sound like an idiot for saying Chase Burns fell and he didn't. Chase Burns is not who we were talking about. Either way, Mike, isn't it kind of funny? You think about Bobby Witt Jr., obviously being a baseball family guy. And then now you have Ethan Holliday, who gets taken at number 2 by the Angels. Like that'd be pretty cool in my opinion, right?
Right. Ethan Holliday playing shortstop and Neto playing second, or Neto playing short and Ethan Holliday playing. I like that up the middle. That feels like a Howie Kendrick, Eric Ibar up the middle, right? And by the way, how come Dad didn't pass along any of the good genes? Not that he was an athlete, but we got nothing.
The other 2 brothers who they're not Halo bros, but you know they're our brothers. They got all the athletic genes, didn't they?
They did. Well, that was more Jeff. Dave, I'm not sure. Now let's talk about some of the best number 2s that have been drafted within the last maybe 10 to 20 years. Justin Verlander was drafted number 2 in 2004 with the Tigers. Number 1 that year was Matt Bush with the Padres. Yeah, he really didn't turn out much. He was kind of a journeyman type of pitcher, didn't really have much success. Will Clark of the Giants was drafted number 2 in 1985. Love Will a Thrill. And number 1 was BJ Surhoff with the Brewers that year. Josh Beckett, familiar name, drafted number 2 in 1999 with the Marlins. Number 1 that year was Josh Hamilton with the Tampa Bay Rays. Didn't turn out with the Rays, actually did better with the Rangers, and then we won't talk about what happened after that. Chris Bryant in 2012 or 2013 with the Cubs was number 2. Number 1 that year was Mark Appel, and Mark, somebody who like went away for a while, came back, and there's a great Twitter thread that he posted not too long ago about being a major league player. You should check it out. It's really good. Alex Bregman was number 2 in 2015 with the Astros. And then number 1 that year was Dansby Swanson with the Braves. And then Alex Gordon, John, speaking of the Royals, in 2005 was number 2. And then number 1 that year, a guy named Justin Upton from the Diamondbacks.
Hey!
So a lot of good players that are drafted recently and a lot of good players over the history of the draft. The point is the Angels potentially could get somebody really, really good. So to just emphasize what we talked about in segment 2, like, this is not hard. And so don't make it hard. Don't make it difficult. Even if there is just a killer of a ball player from high school that you can draft later on, I still think you have to go with the obvious. You might get a Trey Gregory Alford, right? You might get somebody later on, which is great if you do. But I think that the Angels, being as high as they are, they need to go for the guy that's there that everybody recommends, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to hit big.
Yeah, the obvious choice is obvious. I don't think here's what I'll say. I trust Perry Minasian to get this right more than previous GMs.
Same.
Because of who Billy Epler had picked, who Jerry DiPoto had picked. Obviously, Jerry's probably got a better team around him in Seattle because of who they've been able to draft and who they've turned into. So I do trust Perry to do the right thing here. I think his experience with the Braves was really helpful in, kind of assessing all of this. And Perry's been a scout, and so that's important as well. I still can't find that name I was looking for from the draft last year. I'm really upset about that. So, for everybody who commented on YouTube, like, Chase Burns didn't fall, you idiot. I realized my mistake. And so, that's where I'm at.
Just tweet it. When you find it, tweet it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Mike, the obvious choice is obvious. And I think that the Angels need to make the obvious choice here when the draft comes around, because again, the Nationals will probably take their number one pick, whoever it is by then, probably still Ethan Holiday. That'll be interesting. The Holiday brothers, like in that area of the country, Nationals and or DC and Baltimore. That's kind of fun to think about. But all we can hope and pray for here is that the Angels do the right thing.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. His show is available for you on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
I was so caught up with trying to find that name, I forgot to switch our segment thing next to your head. So yeah, the last segment, history of the second draft pick. Good stuff there. Good research, Mike. I appreciate you doing that. Hey, if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show on YouTube. Get in the comments section. It's the best way to interact with us there. I've been doing my best to try to get in there. New baby. It's been tough, but I do see your comments and I appreciate you guys doing that. And Mike jumps in every now and then as well. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Well, John, Max Fried's off the table.
It's true.
Signed with the Yankees, right?
Yankees.
Yeah, Nate Eovaldi's off the table. Re-signed with the Rangers for 3 years, which I think is a great deal.
Yankees didn't get their Soto, and they're like, you know what? Fine, we'll get Fried.
Right. They didn't want to. What it was, Cashman's comment was, I don't want to spend like a drunken sailor.
Well, you did.
Yeah. So who's left for the Halos, John? Will they even make a move? We're going to share some names that could potentially fit the Halos, and we're going to share something that Perry Minasian said that gives us hope for even after the winter meetings. All that is tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. Until tomorrow's show, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
Apparently, I was excited in this episode. A lot of...
I'm just trying to stay awake right now, man.